All right, so there's a lot of stories going on this week. Luke gave you a little foreshadowing of some of the ones we'll cover more in depth later. January 6th, I understand that one side of the audience thinks that all those people should be thrown in prison and throw away the key and they committed insurrection against their government and all those sorts of things. And if those things were true, I might feel the same way. However, you've been lied to, and you've got to stop wanting those lies to be true because that's not the whole story. Yes, I've seen some people break some windows and some stuff like that, but I've seen many, 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 many more videos of people being escorted in, guided around, walking between velvet ropes, being pretty respectable for a
Breaking
house.
windows doesn't constitute insurrection. They may constitute vandalism of some nature, but the state that doing property damage is equivalent to an actual insurrection is a pretty
Correct.
that's yeah,
And shooting a
major
veteran in the
contradiction,
neck.
false equivalency. Yeah, exactly
Yes,
right.
right. I mean, there were people on her side of the glass. There was a whole SWAT sniper team coming up the steps. They did
That's
not
correct.
seem the least bit alarmed that they were being shot at, Tony.
No.
I don't know if people talk about such things, but like that's a weird situation. And the guy who broke the window running behind the SWAT guys and changing his clothes and them not doing anything. I mean,
Yeah. Around the stairs there. Yeah.
usually the SWAT type team doesn't want people lurking around them, hiding behind them, changing their clothes without, putting some flexi cuffs on them. Just saying. So there's a lot more to those events. Now, for a side of the audience that thinks there's no such thing as a false flag, that your leaders are as pure as the driven snow, that they would never lie to you, that they would never set up their opposition so that they could gain further power or retain their power, I feel sorry for you. And life is not a cartoon. There's nuance and detail, and it's more than 8K. It's more than high definition.
And unfortunately, false flags are the norm in historical patterns over the past, let's say, 150 years. So,
It's how we go
this
to
it
war,
really
kids.
began in the mid 19th century, the British State Department. And so, when you understand what Palmerston did within the British State Department and being able to rile up young idealistic youths among multiple across Europe and South America, and even
The Young
attempting in
Turks,
America,
for
yeah,
instance.
exactly.
Yeah,
Young Italians,
the Young Americans. It's
young
not just a
Americans.
David
There
Bowie
was
song.
socialist movements in the
Yeah.
1910s, 20s. Very yes, you got it. So there's a long history of that. So we can actually take it from precedent, not from conjecture or speculation, but from precedent in history to say this has actually been done before. We can show the documentation, we can show the evidence, whether it's Lusitania, whether it's what happened Pearl Harbor, whether it happened with the first
Remember
World
the
Trade Center
Maine,
bombing, the
Gulf
second
of
World Trade Center bombing,
Tonkin. I
Oklahoma
mean,
City bombing. Anyone? That's
1993 World Trade Center bombing.
well, yep. All right. Terrence Yakey with the Oklahoma. So yeah, so there's just like
Nord Stream pipeline.
Nord Stream pipe, right? So there's, and that's at this point, you have to willfully ignore the other side's evidence. You have to consciously, willfully, volitionally choose to not, you know, consider the other side's evidence, and that's what has to be done in order to uphold the narrative that there was an insurrection that day that justifies crying on national television and setting up this whole sort of
I just
stage
said to Lisa while
propaganda.
we were watching
I mean,
that
it's
clip.
unreal, man. It's
I was like, go ahead and compare 9/11 and January 6th again. Go ahead and do it again. Whatever congressman, senator wants to do that, I'm going to make a video. And on this side is the people going through the velvet ropes. And on this side over here are the people jumping out of the building because
right.
they're being burned to death. And I'll play that for a long time because it went on for a long time. Both scenes. And then we'll see who wants to compare January 6th to 9/11.
Yeah, there's no comparison. You can't even draw an analogy to it. It lacks in so many ways. The October 7th attacks, by contrast, are oddly or eerily sort of that can be a strong analogy to what happened in 9/11.
Are you saying,
So,
I mean, there could be some false flag parallels there.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
they
exactly.
take this grandiose, polite way of saying it, number of victims from 10/7, and they neglect to tell you friendly fire, helicopters, Hellfire missiles on their own people. Not all of them. Hamas killed lots of people that day.
Yes, it did.
But when you got to the actual numbers, when Israel's like, it's around 700, it's not 1,400, right? And then a large percent of that is friendly fire. Hamas killed hundreds of people, yes, and it was unconscionable, and that's not the way you play war.
But again, it seemed like
involve women and children.
It seems like they might have attacked military targets. That
They
was one
did.
of the big, interesting. I'm not saying that justifies, but
Embarrassing points that they didn't want to mention that day.
Yeah. And it
How
seems like a lot of
effective
the
bass
civilian
boats were.
casualty. Plus the multiple breaches by land, by sea, by air that occurred, by one of the
hang glider things.
Right.
Ultralights, they call
I shouldn't
them.
laugh. It's absurd. People got hurt, injured, died. Yeah, but at the same time, it's
absurd. You put people in a position where they have to go get ultralights and bass boats to attack one of the strongest militaries in the world.
Yeah,
that's what's a little bit unconscionable right there. How many dozens of decades has that going on? No, not dozens of decades. How many dozens and dozens of years this century has that gone on? They've invaded Gaza like 5 times since turn of the century. So it's not like this, like it just came up on 10/7. That's what Hamas in a vacuum was all about. Didn't just start on 10/7.
Yeah, there's let me see if I can find it. But Finkelstein, he pointed out like there have been a number of incursions in the either the West Bank or Gaza. Obviously, there's a settlement in West Bank, but in Gaza itself, there's been a number of incursions by the IDF 2008, 2018. I think there's been a whole host of many that we haven't really heard about unless you live really specifically in those areas. I'm trying to remember cast something.
Cass Sunstein?
It's the operation names. There was a couple of Razor something. There's another one that was very famous.
Jericho Wall. That's a famous one. Yeah, hey, the other thing is, since Palestine isn't recognized as a state and it's not allowed to have a military or any type of self-defense, what did you expect the prison slaves to do? At what point did you expect them to just leave? What? I mean, ethnic cleansing has always been the plan for the area.
Right.
This is Nakba 2, Electric Boogaloo, and they're getting everybody out of there. And
Operation Cast Lead. So
yes,
one of the
there you go. Thank
Cast Lead, yeah.
Can you show that on screen for people so they can have the spelling of it?
Absolutely. I'll even take it.
That's part of this show too, is the references.
The Institute for Middle East Understanding. Let's see, there we go. Operation Cast Lead.
Yeah,
so this is Israel's use of white phosphorus munitions in densely populated urban areas of Gaza during Operation Cast Lead. Just so people understand.
Yeah, it's not a chess term. It's not castled.
Yeah. I thought you were saying Castlelays, I think.
I wanted to make sure because the words sort of roll. Yeah, cast lead, as in casting lead or forging.
But it's LED, isn't it?
No, LEAD.
No, it's LED. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, as in the metal lead, yeah. Facts and figures. According to investigations by independent Israeli and Palestinian human rights organizations, between 1,385 and 1,419 Palestinians were killed during cast lead, a majority of them civilians, including at least 308 minors under the age of 18. More than 5,000 more. And this for the scale and this is considered a small operation. 5,000 more were wounded compared to obviously what's happening now. 13 Israelis were also killed, including 3 civilians. According to the UN, 3,500 housing units were completely destroyed. 2,800 sustained severe damage. This was, I want to say 2008 on December 27th.
This is before the Goldstone Report, then.
Mm-hmm. That would be yes. I'm pretty sure. I think that was in the aftermath of it. Israel launched Operation Cast Lead on December 20. So it says here on December 27, 2008, Israel launched Operation Cast Lead, a massive 22-day military assault on the Gaza Strip. The ferocity of the attack was unprecedented in the more than 6-decade-old conflict between Israelis and Palestinians, killing some 1,400 Palestinians, most of them civilians. In the aftermath of the offensive, a UN-appointed fact-finding mission found strong evidence of war crimes and crimes against humanity committed by both the Israeli military and Palestinian militias. Investigations by human rights groups such as Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch came to the same conclusion. And it leads me to this link, which is leading me to, unfortunately, file or directory not found. But the organization it's leading me to is what?
Well, I have this right here that goes with that. This is the United Nations fact-finding mission on the conflict
United
in
Nations
Gaza.
Website. Yeah, it's from the United Nations.
Oh, sorry, they can't find that page for Tony. Look at that. I have. So this is
how convenient, actually.
The Goldstone Report comes out of this. I had another link up for it as well.
And that's the one I think Norman Finkelstein references often. Is that one?
So
and also
when we get to their accusations of war crimes and such later, We're just, laying out
This
a
is
little history.
2008. So there's historical, again, precedent
Right.
for these sorts of incursions. So it's hard to put people, I was actually going through, I think, Amazon Shorts or something. There's this professor. He must actually professor at Penn State. And he was talking about Palestinian and Israeli relationships. And it was really interesting to hear because he actually went over there multiple times, and I didn't anticipate some of his conclusions in regards to the lack of reality in the West we have of the internal struggle that's been going on because it's been hidden from us historically for so long, and so propagandized by the not just the ADL but
By
AIPAC
hidden,
and their political.
you mean they've been lying about this for a long time?
Oh
That's
my
how they
God.
hide it.
That's why Mossad is considered more sophisticated than the CIA.
Is that
as
what Robert
sophisticated-
Maxwell said before they
like Paul Joseph Watson said with Ari Ben Menash, right? There's Mossad and MI6. That's the claim. That was Epstein, was not CIA. It was Mossad and MI6.
Yeah,
it was
the
British
CIA's
and
like the
Israeli intelligence.
along. Right.
CIA is more of a like enforcer. I feel like they are the ones to send in special forces or to make sure they, the other ones operate more surreptitiously, covertly, with greater sophistication. But that's conjecture on my part.
All right. So here's some more facts. It's going to come full circle in a minute. United Nations fact-finding mission on the Gaza conflict, also known as the Goldstone Report, was a United Nations fact-finding mission established in April of 2009, pursuant to the resolution HRC Res S91 of the United Nations Human Rights Council. Following the Gaza war as an independent fact-finding mission to investigate all violations of human rights in international humanitarian law. Imagine how long it would take them to do that right now against the Palestinian people throughout the occupied Palestinian territory, particularly in the occupied Gaza Strip, due to the current aggression. Now, this is back in 2009. South African jurist Richard Goldstone was appointed to head the mission. So I would have called, I was like, hey, that's a little interesting that their best buddy, ally, nuclear weapons partner, apartheid supporter, South Africa, is going to get on because it's another former British colony, and both South Africa and Israel were colonized, proto-colonized, if you want to say it, by the Rothschild funding. And that's not a trope. That's facts of history. And we can get to those facts and the pieces of evidence that are so fascinating and spendable. 500 shekel note. We'll get to that. The Goldstone Report accused both the IDF and the Palestinian militants of war crimes, possible crimes against humanity. It recommended that each side openly investigate its own conduct to bring the allegations to the International Criminal Court if they failed to do so. The government of Israel rejected the report as prejudiced and full of errors, and also sharply rejected the change that it had a policy of deliberately targeting, the charge that it was deliberately targeting civilians. So this is evidence from 2009. It's been going on a long time. Now let's get back to this January 6th accusation. You've seen on 10/7, that's not even an insurrection. Multiple militants attacking targets, that's not even an insurrection. Israel's government was not threatened by that. Let's go back to January 6th. Does that look anything like 10/7 or 9/11? No, it doesn't. It looks like some useful idiots leading people through. Useful idiots, meaning people who might have known that these people were going to get hung out to dry, and they opened the doors for them anyway. Hey, come on in. This is part of the coup, the insurrection that actually happened.
I like the way you actually describe it in regards to 9/11. If you were to take a forensic officer to the site of 9/11, after 9/11, after the aftermath, when you have the opportunity to actually go and visit Ground Zero, every rule by forensic science, if anyone understands how to conduct an investigation in regards to criminal activity, had been broken. And that is almost parallel to what happened on January 6th, insofar as when it comes to the police, the riot procedures, how to deal with it. They broke every single basic rule in regards to how to deal with a riotous, emotional crowd.
And they shot the crowd to make them riotous.
Right, exactly. That's where there's more evidence. Right. And then Tucker, we know what happened with him and Fox News and releasing that evidence, combined with the pressure from the lawsuit against Fox in regards to the covering the potential election fraud and all that sort of stuff. So there's just too much counter evidence now. And it's reasonable based on the counter evidence to present a theory that there's more involved, it'd be unreasonable to say that is the only theory, but right now it's reasonable based on the evidence, the counter evidence, or the extra evidence that's been presented to us that has been denied from us for so long in order to craft the specific narrative they need. And what I would really, in a really sort of beguiling way, I was thinking today, like, is this the point though? Can you craft a narrative that you already know is false, will eventually be shown to be false, but the narrative now covers, it's 3 years ago. So now it's like, do you just transition from whatever narrative you're crafting around it to something else, and people sort of like tenuously sort of forget about it because it was something that happened seemingly in the past? Like, anyways, I'm just thinking of like sophisticated ways in which they craft and manipulate narratives. So like time goes by and all of a sudden 3 years go by, we're still dealing with January 20th. And yet they're still, using this as this narrative that's been so thoroughly debunked and yet is so divisive because of, if you are someone who takes the position that accepts that evidence, you're automatically labeled, you're prescriptively labeled by another side to be of this nature, period. It's not just you're a free thinking human being that can make up his own mind and decisions about any specific.
We got ourselves a Rita. Yeah.
And exactly. So I just wonder, like, what's the real consequence of all this? Is this part of the larger sort of psyop? Like, they know these things are false and it'll be shown to be false, and is that the point after a certain time?
Well, it's part of the demoralization
that for sure.
You can know all this stuff's false, and those people are still in prison for pretty long prison terms, long,
and they're still going after
longer
it.
than Ghislaine got.
They're claiming they want to go after people that were around the Capitol now. I mean, if that's true, that's terrifying. They are really doubling, tripling, quadrupling down, especially as we come into election year, curiously enough.
I smell fear.
I think
these are the moves of weak people who are intellectually bankrupt, who resort to violence. They're the same people we've been playing against the whole time. It's a finite planet. There's only so many cowards among us. They're still doing it, and they're going to continue to do it all through this election cycle, right? Trying to make Trump off the ballot, all this other stuff that they're trying to do. That's weak. You can't beat him on the field, so you have to give him like a parking ticket and tow his car so he can't make it to the game.
Yeah,
that's fucking
below
weak.
The knees or below the belt shots. It's below the belt shots.
Or
Any guy will know what
for Hawking, it's below the wheelchair line. However that story worked.
Below the raised chalkboards.
Yeah. So, LD, do you want to explain that meme? Let's see. I'll put it up on screen.
Yeah.
This thing.
Yeah, that was not real.
This is not real, and yet, what happened with it?
Well, I tuned in the other day to the Mario Nol Space just to check it out, and I was listening in. I happened to be scrolling Twitter, and I retweeted that, instantly thinking, and I'm not saying I had anything to do with it, but my experience was I saw it, I thought, that's not real, that's hilarious. I retweeted it. Then a couple minutes later, Mario Nol breathlessly was like, "Oh, okay, we've got something new. So I just want to read this out loud." And he posted it, and he's reading it out loud. And then it was cool. Derek Bros was in that space. He got some airtime, as did Johnny Vedmore. But Mario asked Derek to comment on this particular excerpt from the Epstein documents, and Derek handled it well. And then a few minutes later, Mario realized that, oh, this is not real. So,
yeah,
it got a lot of engagement, but
it's funny because it's believable, though.
I know.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say it's believable. I mean, when raised up chalkboards, I mean that's where the first thing when I saw it, when LG just posted it, I was like, yeah, that's got to be fake. But then I'm like, well, I mean, how creepy could he be? And then the mind starts. I'm like, could he really be that weird?
Well, it's also a deposition, so somebody could have just had a sense of humor during the deposition.
Right, that's another thing, right? I thought it was, right. If it's an actual deposition, someone's making a joke inside of it, and they just took it, wrote it down verbatim. That's another. Yeah.
And
that's pretty.
Neil
funny,
deGrasse Tyson on there because
funny.
he also had interest in black holes. That was his thesis. Black holeology.
He has a lot of different black holes. There's one where his brain should be, and there's one, below the belt. Scary one. 3.
Hey, before we go to this clip,
it's all those COVID.
You guys still have a couple weeks on the 2 months free membership for Grand Theft World. So if you don't have a membership, hop on. If you got friends and family, you're trying to listen to the show, coworkers, other people you hang out with, this is the way get behind the paywall, start getting some value, go to a town hall, watch some of the exclusive content that we don't let out in the public for various reasons, because they be censoring a lot these days. So if you click on the banner, it takes you to the page. It tells you all the stuff you get. It's got some great looking web pagery here. And yeah, so that's going on. And there's lots of bonuses and choices and stuff you haven't seen. But it's all evergreen, valuable content that you will be able to fortify your mind with, one show at a time. So we thank you for your support. And we also have something going on. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, I was
going to say
just
on
point out. Yeah, go ahead.
January 27th, I think, is the next gig, and I'll get a graphic for it because I don't have a web page up for it right now. So go ahead, Tony.
Okay, I was just going to say to back up what you were just saying. There's actually going to be a town hall this Tuesday. Tried to have one last Tuesday, but I think with the day after New Year's, with the holiday sort of rescheduling, we didn't get many people showing up, which is rare. Usually we get a ton of people. So I figured I'll just postpone it a week and we'll start again this week. So Tuesday night town hall, 7:00 p.m. Also, I know a lot of people sent questions in over the holiday period. I apologize. The holidays were very crazy for me for many reasons. I intend to make sure I'm active again starting tomorrow in the community, make sure I get your questions answered, and get back to, being focused with work and the community and GTW. So,
all right. So I might be able to make it. I could probably make it this Tuesday. Let me check my calendar and see what conflicts. But I also got this for you. January 27th, we're going to do the Underground History of America super lecture. This live presentation goes on. There's a bunch of cool stuff that comes with it. There's like 10 bonuses that come with it. And yeah, so if you haven't checked that out, it's at universityofreason.com. And we'll also have some links for the members of GTW. But here's some of the bonuses you get that would tell you why you want to go to find a URL, such as universityofreason.com/TUHOA. The Underground History of America. All right, that's January 27th. Reserve your seat.
What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come on.